A strong close on Wall Street sees the S&P 500 set a new record high level, while the Nasdaq gains for the fourth straight day. Asian markets open largely higher as Chinese stimulus measures take effect, while the GIFT Nifty is suggesting a positive start for the Indian market. Crude prices slump. Brent slips over 2.5% to around $71 a barrel on reports that Saudi Arabia will go ahead with the planned production hikes later this year. Silver rises to its highest level in 12 years, while gold prices hit yet another record high. Union government sticks to the budget estimates, will borrow 6.61 lakh crore rupees in the second half of this financial year. This accounts for more than 47% of the annual borrowing plan. The Nifty indices rejig comes into effect today. Trent and Bharat Electronics will enter the Nifty 50 to replace DB's Lab and LTI Mindtree. The Nifty Bank will see the inclusion of Canara Bank at the expense of Bandhan Bank. Hello, good morning. You're watching Power Breakfast in the Mumbai Newsroom studio. I am Vinny Motiwala and you are tuned into CNBC TV 18. Let's look at what the Asian markets are doing. Not a bad day coming in for the Asian markets. Friday surely being exciting because Hang Seng holding on to gains of almost 2%, Taiwan Index holding on to gains of 0.8%. We've seen overall the Asian markets, whether you look at an ASX 200, Nikkei, Shanghai, all of them are trading on the positive side. We also did have the China stimulus that has come into effect, so that is keeping some bit of a gains there. While right now, just a short while ago, we did have the China industrial profits, which came in for the month of August. On a year-on-year basis, we're seeing a decline of 18%. So let's wait out and see how this plays out. But as of now, Asian markets indicating a positive start, and that is why let's look at the Nifty implied open, the GIFT Nifty. That's also indicating a positive start for the Indian markets. 31 points uptick is the Nifty implied open. GIFT Nifty at 26,340 is what we're watching out for. So yes, keeping an eye out on that, because surely a positive handover from the Asian markets and the US markets. Wall Street, that ended higher with S&P 500 closing at record high. This was backed by an upbeat US economy data that we saw coming in. The S&P 500 actually posted all-time high levels, rising 0.40%, while the Dow Jones average scaled as much as 260 points. The Nasdaq, tech-heavy Nasdaq, that also saw a gain of around 108 points in last night's trade. Let's go across to CNBC's Steve Kowak, who's joining in with us to give us a wrap on what's happened on the Wall Street.
U.S. markets finished higher across the major indexes Thursday after positive economic data and a rally in the tech sector. The Dow was up 260 points, the S&P 500 up 23 points, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq up 108 points. OpenAI is considering a plan to restructure the company to become a for-profit business. The artificial intelligence company and maker of ChatGPT was founded as a nonprofit, and a source tells CNBC it will retain that part of the business as a separate company. News of the restructuring coming just a day after OpenAI's chief technology officer Mira Murati and two other top researchers announced they were leaving the company. OpenAI, which has a huge backing from Microsoft, is currently in a funding round that could value the company at more than $150 billion. And shares of Super Microcomputer fell more than 12% today after a report that the Justice Department has opened a probe into the company. Supermicro makes computers that companies use as servers for websites. The Wall Street Journal reports that the investigation is in the early stages. It comes after short seller Hindenburg Research accused the company of accounting manipulation in an August report, but CNBC has not independently verified Hindenburg's claims. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
Thank you so much for that. But some more update coming in, and actually it's earnings update now. IT services major Accenture reported a strong fourth quarter result for the fiscal year 2024. Revenue reaching around $16.4 billion compared to just a $15.99 billion for the fourth quarter last year. The software bellwether also raised its guidance to 3 to 6% for the full year, while also announcing a buyback of $4 billion. Surely keeping an eye out on all the Indian IT companies as well. We always see a move coming in when Accenture reports its numbers, and they've raised their guidance, so that's going to be interesting. But let's move on. And in an exclusive chat with CNBC's CNBC Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen hopes for a soft landing backed by upbeat economic environment in the US market. Also says that there is a need to bring down fiscal deficit. Listen to what she had to say.
And of course, there are always risks. We are seeing a less tight labor market and some growing, a little bit more slack in the labor market that we had previously. The unemployment rate has drifted up, still low by historical standards, but hopefully this is going to turn out to be a stable situation with the Fed supporting continued strength in the labor market, and inflation has come down considerably. So I've said for a long time, I always believed that there was a path to a soft landing, that it was possible to bring inflation down while maintaining a strong labor market, and to me, that's what the data suggests has happened. Well, I think the metric we should be looking at is to decide on the sustainability of fiscal policy is real net interest costs as a share of GDP. And historically, that's been under 2%. It is under 2%. Over time, if we don't do further deficit reduction, it would be likely to drift up. So I think looking forward, it will be necessary to get deficits down and to do some deficit reduction in order to keep the interest costs manageable.
That's all the action that happened in the global markets. But how will all this actually impact our Indian markets? What are we expecting from the Indian markets in terms of trade setup, stocks that we're keeping an eye out on? We do have our research team joining with us this morning. And Vivek, first up, coming to you. Good morning. And are we expecting a happy Friday on the D Street? What's the setup looking like?
Well, so far nothing to complain. The setup looks quite good. Remember, we are starting off a new series. We ended the September series on a very, very strong note. Now, let's look at some of the cues and how they've actually panned out overnight. U.S. markets, all U.S. markets ended with gains, so nothing to complain over there. Oil markets, in fact, yesterday cracked quite sharply, almost a 2.5% cut across oil markets. Brent futures ended lower by 2.5% to the $71.6 a barrel mark. So again, that continues to remain a tailwind as far as India is concerned. Now, talking about the Indian markets, last hour of expiry day yesterday was quite significant. You saw a surge as far as all of the benchmark indices was concerned. Nifty Bank, all of them ended at record closing levels. And in fact, when you're talking about, which were the key sectoral gainers yesterday, the auto index surged quite significantly. Maruti, M&M, all of them did very well in the session. Hero Motor was an outlier and lagged as far as the auto pack was concerned. What continued to do well was also the metal pack, and metal pack now amongst the top sectoral gainers even in this particular week. Key stocks, that actually lagged yesterday. Crompton Consumer, remember the company in an analyst meet flagged off demand concerns as far as Q2 was concerned, dragged particular stock drag. But what are the key cues to track in today's trading session? Remember, we will be having the NSE indices, the Nifty, as well as CPSE rebalancing. So you will see some impact as far as stocks are concerned. Amongst all of those indices, remember, BL trend to enter the Nifty from Monday. And Asian markets, GIFT Nifty, all indicating a positive start for our own markets.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Vivek, keeping an eye out on that one. But what are the important stocks that you should be keeping on your radar today? Vamakshi is joining with us. Good morning, Vamakshi.
Well, good morning, Vinny. Let me first start off with IT stocks. They will be in focus because Accenture has upped its FY25 revenue guidance to 3 to 6% as compared to 1.5 to 2.5% earlier. This bodes positive cues for the IT stocks like Infosys, TCS, Wipro. All of these counters will be in focus today. Adani Green has announced execution of its JV, which is Adani Renewable Energy 64 Limited with Total Energies. Total Energies is looking to invest nearly $444 million for a 50% stake in the JV. Biocon has partnered with Tabuk Pharma to commercialize GLP-1 products in the Middle East, and these products are used for treating diabetes as well as chronic weight management. Torrent Pharma has refuted claims of Shelcal 500 500 allegedly failing CDSCO quality tests. Railtel Corp also on our radar, and that is because the company has bagged orders worth almost 155.72 crores from Rural Development Department, Mantralaya, Maharashtra. Our rights will also be on our radar. Its consortium emerges as the lowest bidder in a Delhi metro project worth 87.58 crores, and out of this, rights share is around 49%, that is around 43 odd crores. Sources on Nuvama Wealth suggest that Edel Finance and ECAP Equities are looking to sell 6.4% equity in Nuvama Wealth Management via block deals. The floor price for this deal is at 6,455 per share, putting it at a 5% discount to the current market price, and the block size is at 1,465 odd crores at the floor price. And lastly, keep an eye out on Union Bank. Some worker unions have proposed to go on a strike on September 27th, and this comprises of about 7% of the total employees of the bank.
Thank you so much for that, Vamakshi. But Nigel, coming to you, good morning. And how is the F&O space looking like? What are we watching out for after the end of September series?
Well, morning, Vinny. You know, the rollovers are a little bit higher than what we've seen on an average in the last 3 series or so. And the total open interest of the Nifty as well is a little more meatier in comparison to what we saw at the start of the September series. So the longs on the Nifty have got rolled over. Though in the Nifty Bank, as we saw 2 sessions ago, there was more of a short covering bounce that you've seen out there. Now, in the September series, what stood out was the underperformance of the small and the mid-cap names in comparison to the large-cap stocks. And also the Nifty Bank, that came back into play, and that was the leader of the rally that we saw in September. The factors to track from here on, crude prices have been subdued. That's a macro tailwind, and that's very, very positive. Can the metal index continue its bounce that we've seen post the Chinese stimulus? And also, can this large-cap outperformance continue? So those are the top 3 points that I'll be tracking. How are the FIs positions? Well, they're net long, and they're aggressively net long, even more than what we saw at the start of September. What about the clients? Well, they're net short, and they're aggressively net short, even more than we saw at the start of the September series as well. So both of them at totally opposite ends of the spectrum. But what they both agree on, it's a stock-specific market, and that's why, in fact, the client as well as FIs, both of them are net long on stock futures. So it continues to be a stock-specific market. For today's trading session, tech stocks will be in focus, post our Accenture's numbers and post the guidance out there. And most brokerages, they believe that things are bottoming out and growth will come back. And IT sector, well, it contributes, IT stocks contribute roughly around 15% of the total Nifty constituents as well. Levels should come up for you on the screen. On the upside, it appears the Nifty is on its way to 26,500, or that will be the first reference point. On the downside, 25,800, we almost went there a couple of sessions ago. So that becomes a bit of a support in the near term. Back to you.
Thanks so much for that, Nigel. But on that note, let's just slip into a very short break. Don't go anywhere. After the break, we'll come back with more news and updates. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Let's move on. And the Indian government, in consultation with the Reserve Bank of India, has announced plan to raise rupees 6.61 lakh crores in the second half of FY 2024 and 2025, constituting to 47.2% of its total gross market borrowing, targeting of around 14.01 lakh crore rupees for the fiscal year, which is in line with the expectations. But Sapna is joining with us to give us more details on that.
Well, certainly the government is very much within its FY25 borrowing plan of around 14 lakh odd crores. 47.2% of that is going to be borrowed in the H2, which is basically around 6.61 lakh odd crores. That's one. Second, even in terms of your sovereign green bonds, well, the issuances are pegged at 20 odd thousand crores. Now, if you can recall, in H1, the government had cancelled auctions worth 10,000 odd crores. Probably they have tried to weave it back in the H2 calendar. Also, it's noteworthy that over 50% of India's borrowings, or rather government borrowings, are through the long tenor bonds, 15 years and above. So that is probably indicative of long-term interest by investors in India's bond markets, and that's a positive aspect. Last but not the least, the DA Secretary Mr. Ajay Seth has summed it up very well. He has said that the government is very conscious of remaining within the annual limits of debt repayments. That is something the government can't exceed. And plus, in the future years, there are going to be higher redemptions. Say, for example, next year, probably 5 lakh crore worth of redemptions are going to come up. So, to remain within limits is very, very important for the government. and these higher redemptions are basically going to be because of the higher borrowing that the government had done during the pandemic years. So basically smoothing out the borrowing curve, smoothing out the borrowing plan, the government has stuck to what it had indicated earlier. Last but not the least, officials are also indicating that in terms of the sovereign gold bonds, well, government may borrow as per assessment, but there is no indication that they are going to come up with a fresh tranche. At least as of now, there is absolutely no indication. Plus, also the T-bill calendar that has been moderated because of estimated good positive cash flows.
Thank you so much for that, Sapna. But let's move on. And Tata Electronics has signed a deal with Taiwan's Power Chip Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation to set up India's first chip manufacturing plant in Gujarat. PSMC will provide the design and construction expertise for the greenfield fab. Now, it will also provide engineering support for the transfer of technologies. The facility will have a production capacity of 50,000 wafers per month. Shilpa Ranipeta spoke to Tata Sons chairman N. Chandrasekaran on their partnership.
Fundamentally, semiconductors power everything. Whether you talk about auto industry, whether you talk about power industry, consumer electronics industry, industrial IoT, medical industry, precision medicine, drones, aerospace. I mean, you can think of any industry from agriculture to very advanced new tech industries. Everything is going to be driven by semiconductors. And so it is fundamental for a country like India to have the capability, because once we have the capability, we will be able to custom design our products, our services, and come out with a lot of innovation.
Okay, let's move on. And Reliance Jio's Infocom's chairman Akash Ambani has joined the board of Viacom 18 ahead of its merger with Walt Disney's Star India. Both A3 Systems co-founder James Murdoch and Qatar Investment Authority Tech, Media and Telecom head Mohammad Ahmed Al Hardan have also joined the board along with two others. The reconstitution of the board is a key step in integrating these two media companies, and Anita Ambani, who is expected to take on the role of the chairperson of the merged entity, has also been officially inducted into the Viacom 18 board. So keeping an eye out on that one. Reliance has inaugurated the 500th Jio BP Pulse EV charging station as a part of the fuels and mobility joint venture between the companies. The new EV charging station was installed at the Jio World Center in Mumbai's Bandra Kurla complex. This also marks the installation of the 5,000th Jio BP charging point across India as well. Okay, on that note, we're going to slip into a very short break, but don't go anywhere, because after the break, we'll talk about what's happening to gold, silver, and everything in the world of commodities. Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. But let's talk about commodities, because this morning, not only gold, but silver is also glittering. Manisha?
Absolutely, Vinny. Morning. And yes, all-time high for gold yet again, $2,685 an ounce. This is after the Fed fund futures indicating that 67% probability is there for a 50 basis point rate cut yet again in the month of November. Side. And if you look at the crude oil prices, well, that fell 2% overnight. This is after Saudi Arabia drops oil price targets to hike output, and also Libya is working to restore the crude exports. So from 75 of a high in this week, we are just about trading at 71 at this point.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Manisha. But that's all the time we have on this edition of Power Breakfast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bazaar Morning Call up next.